The crystal wine glass shattered against the marble floor, red liquid spreading like blood across the white tiles. But that wasn't what made Amara's heart stop. It was the bucket of dirty dishwater her mother-in-law had just emptied over her head at the family dinner table. Amara stood frozen, soggy food scraps sliding down her pressed white blouse, greasy water dripping from her braided hair onto the expensive Persian rug beneath her feet. The silence in the dining room was deafening. Then it broke. Her husband Chaik threw his head back and laughed. Deep, cruel laughter that echoed off the high ceilings of his family's Lagos estate. Beside him, his lover, a woman named Precious who worked as a secretary in the same building where Amara's family had their offices, giggled behind her manicured hand. "That's what you get for thinking you belong here," Chaik's mother, Mrs. Okonkwo, sneered, still holding the empty bucket. "You were never good enough for my son. Never." A woman with no family name, no connections, nothing but that quiet, boring face. Amara's hands trembled at her sides, but she didn't move. She didn't wipe her face. She didn't cry. She simply stood there, water pooling at her feet, while the entire Okonkwo family watched with satisfaction. Chaik's father sat at the head of the table, saying nothing, his face carefully neutral. His sisters whispered to each other, phones already out, probably recording. This would make good gossip at the country club. "Chaik," Amara finally spoke, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning through her chest. "Is this really what you want?" He stood up, straightening his designer suit, the same suit she had pressed for him that morning before he told her they were going to his family's house for dinner. She should have known something was wrong. He never invited her to family dinners anymore. "What I want," Chaik said, walking over to put his arm around Precious's waist, "is a woman who knows how to have fun. A woman who doesn't spend all her time working, ignoring her husband, making him feel small." He pulled Precious closer. "A woman who actually wants to be seen with me." "You're invisible, Amara," Precious added, her voice sickly sweet. "Even in a room full of people, nobody notices you. You're like furniture. Boring, old furniture." More laughter rippled through the room. Amara recognized some of these people. Chaik's cousins, his uncles, family friends. People she had cooked for, hosted, smiled at for 3 years of marriage. None of them defended her now. "The divorce papers are ready," Mrs. Okonkwo announced, pulling a manila envelope from behind a decorative vase on the sideboard. "We've been generous. You can have your clothes and that old car you drove here in. Everything else stays with the family as it should." She thrust the envelope toward Amara's chest, but Amara didn't take it. Instead, she looked around the room slowly, meeting each person's eyes. Some looked away. Others stared back with open hostility. "I see," Amara said quietly. She reached up and carefully removed her wedding ring, setting it gently on the dining table beside her untouched plate of jollof rice. "I'll have my lawyer contact you." "Your lawyer?" Chaik scoffed. "With what money? You work as some kind of clerk or something, right? You can barely afford that lawyer, let alone a good one." Amara smiled then. It was small, sad, but somehow it made Mrs. Okonkwo's confident expression flicker for just a moment. "Yes," Amara said softly. "I work very hard. I always have." She turned toward the door, her wet shoes squelching with each step. "I'll collect my things this week." "Good riddance," someone called out behind her. As Amara walked through the grand foyer toward the front door, she passed the family portrait hanging on the wall. Chaik stood proudly in the center, his parents on either side, his sisters kneeling in front. She had never been invited to be in that photo. Outside, the night air was cool against her wet skin. Her old Toyota waited in the circular driveway, parked far from the luxury cars that belonged to the Okonkwo family. She got in, closed the door, and sat in the darkness for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and made a single call. "Yes," she said when the line connected. "It's time. Monday morning, proceed with everything we discussed." She ended the call and started the car. As she drove away from the Okonkwo estate, she didn't look back once. She had learned long ago that silence was the most powerful weapon a woman could wield. And she had been silent for far too long, preparing for this moment. What the Okonkwo family didn't know would change everything. If you're curious about what Amara has been hiding and what happens when the truth finally comes out, stay tuned for the next chapter. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one with the most power. Don't underestimate anyone based on what you see on the surface. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because this story is just getting started. Monday morning arrived with the kind of sunshine that made Lego sparkle. Amara woke up in her small apartment across town, the place she had kept even after marrying Chaik. He had always complained about it, called it beneath them, insisted she should give it up. But she never did. Some part of her had always known she might need it again. She showered carefully, washing away the last traces of Saturday night's humiliation. Then she dressed in a simple navy blue suit, pearl earrings, and low heels. She pulled her braids into a neat bun and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was calm, composed, ready. Her phone buzzed. A message from her lawyer, Mr. Adeyemi. Everything is in place. The board meeting is at 10. Amara replied with a simple thumbs up and grabbed her briefcase. Across town, Chaik was having a very different kind of morning. He woke up in his apartment with Precious beside him, feeling satisfied with how things had gone. His mother had called him twice already, praising him for finally getting rid of that dead weight, and reminding him that Precious came from a good family with connections. "Baby," Precious murmured, stretching beside him, "we should go shopping today. I need a new wardrobe now that I'm going to be the next Mrs. Okonkwo." Chaik kissed her forehead. "Anything you want. But first, I have to go to work. Big week ahead." He worked at Okonkwo Industries, the family manufacturing business his grandfather had started. It was decent, brought in good money, kept the family comfortable. But the real prize, the thing that had kept the Okonkwo family living large for the past 5 years, was their contract with Adunola Corporation. Adunola Corporation was one of the largest conglomerates in West Africa. Shipping, real estate, technology, manufacturing, they had their hands in everything. Landing a contract with them was like winning the lottery. The Okonkwo family's contract was for industrial supplies, and it was worth millions every year. Chaik's entire salary came from managing that account. His father's new cars, his mother's jewelry, his sister's expensive schools abroad, all of it was possible because of Adunola Corporation. Every single member of the Okonkwo family who worked at Okonkwo Industries depended on that contract in one way or another. When Chaik arrived at the office, his father was already there, looking unusually tense. "We got a message from Adunola Corporation," the older man said, not looking up from his computer. "The CEO wants to meet with us today. In person." Chaik felt a flutter of nervousness. "That's unusual. We've had this contract for 5 years and we've never met the CEO. Everything always goes through their procurement department." "I know," his father replied. The message said it's urgent. Something about reviewing all existing contracts and partnerships. "Review?" Chaik's voice rose slightly. "But we've done everything right. We deliver on time, quality is good, prices are fair." I know, his father waved his hand dismissively. "It's probably just a formality. Maybe they want to expand the contract. Either way, we need everyone there. I've already called your mother, your Uncle James, your sisters. Anyone who works here and benefits from this contract needs to be in that meeting room at 10 o'clock. Chaik nodded, but something felt off. He couldn't explain it, just a strange feeling in his gut. By 9:45, the Okonkwo family had gathered in their largest conference room. Mrs. Okonkwo arrived wearing her finest jewelry, already talking about how she would charm the CEO. Chaik's Uncle James practiced his firmest handshake. His sisters checked their makeup. Everyone was nervous but trying to hide it with bravado. "Remember," Mrs. Okonkwo instructed everyone, "we are the Okonkwo family. We have dignity, status, respect. Whoever the CEO is, they're lucky to work with us." At exactly 10 o'clock, the receptionist called up. "Sir, the representatives from Adunola Corporation are here." "Representatives?" Chaik's father frowned. "I thought it was just the CEO." "The CEO is here, sir, along with their legal team and head of corporate partnerships." The room went silent. A legal team? That didn't sound like a contract expansion. "Send them up," Chaik's father said, his voice tight. The family arranged themselves around the conference table, trying to look powerful and confident. Chaik sat near his father, his heart beating faster than he wanted to admit. Precious had wanted to come, but he'd told her this was family business only. They heard footsteps in the hallway. Multiple people. The conference room door opened. Mr. Adeyemi, a lawyer the Okonkwo family didn't recognize, entered first. Behind him came 3 other people in crisp business suits, carrying folders and tablets. And then, last through the door, came the CEO of Adunola Corporation. Chaik's mother gasped. His father half rose from his chair. Chaik felt the blood drain from his face. It was Amara. But not the Amara they knew. This Amara wore a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Mrs. Okonkwo's entire jewelry collection. Her braids were styled elegantly, her makeup was flawless, and she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who owned everything in the room, including the air they were breathing. She looked at each of them, her expression neutral, professional. "Good morning," Amara said, her voice calm and clear. "Thank you for meeting with us on such short notice. I am Amara Adunola, CEO and sole owner of Adunola Corporation. I believe we have some things to discuss about your contract." The silence in the room was absolute. Chaik couldn't breathe. His mother's mouth hung open. His father looked like he might faint. Amara sat down at the head of the table, the position of power, and folded her hands in front of her. Her team arranged themselves on either side. Mr. Adeyemi opened his briefcase and pulled out several thick folders. "Shall we begin?" Amara asked, looking directly at Chaik with those same quiet eyes that he had always called boring. But there was nothing boring about her now. Keep watching to find out how the Okonkwo family reacts to this shocking revelation. Sometimes the person you underestimate is the one who holds your entire future in their hands. What will Amara do with her power? Mrs. Okonkwo found her voice first, though it came out as a strangled whisper. "This is impossible. You're lying. Amara, what kind of sick joke is this?" Amara didn't flinch. She simply nodded to Mr. Adeyemi, who slid a folder across the table to Chaik's father. "Inside, you'll find the corporate registration documents for Adunola Corporation, established 12 years ago by Miss Amara Adunola," the lawyer said crisply. "You'll also find her educational credentials: MBA from Harvard Business School, undergraduate degree in economics from the London School of Economics, both completed before she turned 23. Chaik's father opened the folder with shaking hands. His face went pale as he scanned the documents. "This can't be real," Chaik stammered, finally finding his voice. "You worked as a clerk. You drove an old car. You lived in that tiny apartment. You never had money for anything." Amara smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "I never said I was a clerk. You assumed. I said I worked in corporate management. Which is true. I manage multiple corporations." She paused. "And I've always believed in living below my means. My father taught me that before he passed. He built Adunola Corporation from nothing, and he taught me that real wealth whispers while poverty shouts." "Your father," Chaik's Uncle James interrupted, "you said your parents were dead. That you had no family." "My parents are dead," Amara confirmed quietly. "My mother died when I was 10. My father died 7 years ago, leaving me everything. As for family, I had none that I could trust until I built my own team of loyal people who saw me for who I truly was, not what they could get from me." She looked around the table, her gaze settling on each Okonkwo family member. "When Chaik and I met 4 years ago at that charity gala, I was tired of people only seeing my money. Tired of men who wanted to marry a corporation instead of a woman. So when he showed interest in me, in quiet, simple Amara who said she worked in management and drove a modest car, I thought maybe I'd found someone different." Chaik's hands clenched into fists on the table. "So you lied to me. You deceived me." "I never lied," Amara corrected calmly. "I simply didn't volunteer information you never asked for. In 3 years of marriage, Chaik, you never once asked about my day at work. Never asked what I actually did. Never wanted to meet my colleagues or see my office. You were so sure I was beneath you that you never looked closely enough to see the truth." Mrs. Okonkwo slammed her hand on the table. This is ridiculous. If you're so rich, why did you let my son pay for everything? Why did you act like some poor helpless girl? I didn't let him pay for everything, Amara replied. Check your records, Mrs. Okonkwo. The rent on the apartment Chike lived in? I paid it, through a property management company I own. The car he drove? Leased through one of my subsidiary companies. The vacation to Dubai last year? Paid for by me, though the receipt went to his email and he never checked who the payment came from. She opened her own folder and slid several bank statements across the table. I paid for approximately 70% of our marital expenses. Chike contributed roughly 30%. I never complained because I wanted him to feel like a man, like he was providing. I thought that's what a good wife did. Chike stared at the bank statements like they were written in a foreign language. One of Amara's team members, a woman named Folake who served as chief operating officer, spoke up. What Mrs. Adunola didn't tell you is that 5 years ago, when your family business was struggling and on the verge of bankruptcy, she was the one who approved your contract with Adunola Corporation. Chike's father jerked his head up. What? We had 53 other suppliers bidding for that contract, Folake continued, reading from her tablet. Companies with better equipment, lower prices, stronger track records. But Mrs. Adunola, who had just started dating your son, chose Okonkwo Industries. She told us she believed in supporting family. The room went deathly quiet. Everything you have, Amara said softly, looking at each person in turn, the new cars, the private schools, the renovation of your family estate, the expansion of your business, your mother's jewelry collection, your sister's study abroad programs, it all came from my company. From my decision to help the family of the man I loved. Chike looked like he might be sick. I didn't know. No, Amara agreed. You didn't know because you never asked. You were too busy complaining that I worked too much. Too busy telling me I was boring, that I didn't know how to have fun, that I made you feel small. Her voice remained steady, but something flickered in her eyes. You felt small because you were small, Chike. Not in wealth, but in character. And no amount of money could fix that. Mrs. Okonkwo stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You cannot do this. You cannot come in here and humiliate my family. We have a contract. It's legal and binding. Mr. Adeyemi cleared his throat. Actually, Mrs. Okonkwo, if you'll refer to page 7 of your contract, you'll see a clause that allows Adunola Corporation to terminate the agreement with 90 days' notice for any reason, or immediately in cases of moral turpitude or behavior that damages the corporation's reputation. Moral turpitude? Chike's father repeated weakly. Amara pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. Suddenly, the large television mounted on the wall flickered to life. It showed video footage from Saturday night, from the family dinner. Someone had recorded everything, every cruel word, every laugh, the moment Mrs. Okonkwo dumped dirty water on Amara's head. The video played in full color, with perfect sound quality. They watched themselves humiliate her, mock her, laugh at her pain. When it ended, Amara turned off the screen. This video was taken by one of your own family members and posted to a private social media group with over 300 people in it, Amara said quietly. It has been shared 47 times. Several of those people have connections to other companies we work with. They've been calling my office since Sunday, asking if the woman in the video is me. Asking why I would tolerate such treatment. Asking what kind of family I married into. She stood up slowly, gathering her folders. You didn't just humiliate me as a woman. You humiliated me as a CEO, as a business leader, as someone who represents a multi-billion-dollar corporation. That, Mrs. Okonkwo, is what moral turpitude looks like. Chike finally stood, his voice desperate. Amara, please. We can fix this. We didn't know. Amara looked at him for a long moment. You didn't know who I was, but you knew who you were. You knew it was wrong to bring your lover to insult your wife. You knew it was wrong to laugh when your mother poured dirty water on me. You knew, Chike. You just didn't care. She walked toward the door, her team following. At the threshold, she paused and turned back. You have 90 days, she said. Find new contracts, find new clients, Prepare your business for life without Adunola Corporation. I'll have the divorce papers finalized within the week. You won't contest them and you won't ask for anything, because you signed a prenuptial agreement that you never read carefully. Mr. Adeyemi will send you a copy. Amara, Mrs. Okonkwo's voice was shaking now, all arrogance gone. Please. My children, their education, their futures. You should have thought about their futures, Amara replied quietly, before you taught them that cruelty has no consequences. She walked out, leaving the Okonkwo family sitting in stunned silence around a conference table in an office that would soon no longer exist. Pride comes before a fall, and the Okonkwo family just learned that lesson the hard way. But is this the end of Amara's story, or is there more to come? Subscribe to find out what happens when the truth spreads beyond that conference room, because in Lagos, news travels fast, and reputation is everything. The news spread through Lagos like wildfire in Harmattan season. By Tuesday afternoon, every major business circle knew the story. The woman the Okonkwo family had humiliated was Amara Adunola, the mysterious CEO who rarely appeared in public but whose business decisions shaped the economy of 3 West African countries. Chike sat in his apartment, his phone buzzing non-stop with messages and calls he couldn't bring himself to answer. Precious had left that morning after seeing the news on social media. She hadn't even packed her things properly, just grabbed her purse and ran out, mumbling something about a family emergency. His mother had called 17 times. His father had sent a message that simply read, "Come to the house. Now." When Chike arrived at the family estate, he found chaos. His mother was on the phone, her voice shrill with desperation, trying to explain to someone why they shouldn't cancel their country club membership. His sisters sat in the living room, both crying. His uncle James paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair. His father sat alone in his study, staring at financial spreadsheets on his computer screen. "It's worse than we thought," the old man said when Chike entered. He didn't look up. The Adunola contract wasn't just our biggest client. It was our anchor. Other companies worked with us because they saw Adunola Corporation trusted us. Now that trust is gone. "How bad is it?" Chike asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "We've lost 3 other contracts since yesterday. 2 more are under review. The bank called about our business loans. They want to renegotiate terms now that our projected revenue has dropped by 65%. His father finally looked at him, and Chike was shocked to see tears in the older man's eyes. "We're going to lose everything. The business, this house, all of it." Chike sank into a chair. "There has to be something we can do. We can apologize. We can make this right." "Apologize?" His father laughed bitterly. "To the woman your mother dumped dirty water on? To the woman you paraded your mistress in front of? What apology could possibly be enough?" In the living room, Mrs. Okonkwo had finished her phone call and was now directing her rage at anyone within earshot. "This is all her fault. She tricked us. She lied about who she was. What kind of woman does that?" Chike's younger sister, Adiz, who had just returned from university in London, spoke up quietly. The kind of woman who wanted to be loved for herself, not her money. "I think I understand her now." Mrs. Okonkwo whirled on her daughter. "You understand her? She's destroying our family." "No, Mama," Adiz said, standing up. "We destroyed ourselves. I was there that night. I recorded that video and sent it to my group chat because I thought it was funny. I thought Amara was nothing, nobody, just some poor woman who trapped Brother Chike." She wiped tears from her face. "But I was wrong. We were all wrong." "Sit down and be quiet," Mrs. Okonkwo snapped. "This is not the time for your dramatic university philosophy." But Adiz didn't sit down. "I saw her face that night, Mama. When you poured that water on her, I saw her eyes. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't shocked. It was like she'd been waiting for us to show her who we really were. And we did." Across town, in her office on the 15th floor of Adunola Tower, Amara was in a meeting with her senior management team. The windows behind her overlooked the Lagos coastline, the Atlantic Ocean stretching endlessly toward the horizon. "The response has been overwhelming," Folake reported, scrolling through her tablet. We've received messages of support from 62 business partners, 23 government officials, and over 100 individual supporters on social media. The business community is rallying behind you." Amara nodded but didn't smile. "And the Okonkwo family?" Struggling, her chief financial officer, Mr. Taiwo, replied. "Their stock value has dropped 40%. They've lost 5 major contracts. Word is they're trying to secure emergency funding, but no bank wants to touch them right now." The video has been viewed over 2 million times. 2 million, Amara repeated softly. She thought about that number. 2 million people had watched her humiliation, but also 2 million people now knew the truth. "There's something else," Folake said carefully. "We've been getting calls from women. Lots of women. They want to share their stories about being underestimated, overlooked, humiliated by people who thought they were powerless." She paused. "They're calling you an inspiration." Amara looked out the window for a long moment. "I never wanted to be an inspiration. I just wanted to be loved." "You can be both," said her head of human resources, Mrs. Chioma, an older woman who had worked with Amara's father and stayed on after his death. "What happened to you wasn't fair, but how you handled it, that shows strength. Real strength, not the kind that comes from hurting others." There was a knock on the conference room door. Amara's secretary peeked in. "Ma'am, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent. It's Mr. Okonkwo Sr., Chike's father." The room went silent. Everyone looked at Amara. "Should I send him away?" the secretary asked. Amara considered for a moment, then shook her head. "No. Give me 10 minutes to finish this meeting, then send him in. Alone." After her team left, Amara sat behind her desk and waited. She had designed this office herself after her father died. It was elegant but not ostentatious, powerful but not intimidating. The walls held photographs of the schools and hospitals her foundation had built across Nigeria. Her father's portrait hung above the bookshelf, watching over everything. When Chike's father entered, he looked 20 years older than he had just 2 days ago. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his face haggard. He stood in front of her desk like a man awaiting judgment. "Sit down, Mr. Okonkwo," Amara said gently. He sat, perching on the edge of the chair. "Thank you for seeing me. I wasn't sure you would. I'm not a cruel person, Mr. Okonkwo, despite what your family might think." He winced. "I'm not here to make excuses. What we did, what my wife did, what my son did, it was unforgivable. I sat there and said nothing while they humiliated you. I'm ashamed." "You should be," Amara replied simply. "I came to ask, to beg, really, not for the contract back. I know that's impossible now." He took a deep breath. "I'm asking you not to destroy us completely. My daughters are in school. They had nothing to do with this. My employees, 43 people who work at Okonkwo Industries, they have families, children, mortgages. They weren't in that dining room." Amara studied him carefully. "You're right. They weren't. And I've already thought about them." She opened a drawer and pulled out a document, sliding it across the desk. "That's a list of companies I do business with who are currently hiring. I've already made calls on behalf of your employees. Every single one of them will have job interviews scheduled within the next 2 weeks. I'll provide good references for anyone who wants them. No one will lose their livelihood because of your family's choices." Chike's father stared at the document, then at her, his eyes filling with tears. "Why would you do this? After everything?" "Because they didn't do anything wrong," Amara said quietly. "And because my father taught me that justice and revenge are not the same thing. Justice corrects the wrong. Revenge just creates more pain." The old man's shoulders shook as he began to cry, really cry, in a way that Amara suspected he hadn't done in decades. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "You were part of our family, and we treated you like trash. My wife, she's not a bad person, she's just proud," Amara finished. "I know. Pride is dangerous, Mr. Okonkwo. It makes us blind to our own faults while we magnify everyone else's. Your wife thought she was better than me because I dressed simply and drove an old car. She never stopped to wonder why I made those choices." He wiped his eyes. "What about Chike? My son, he's devastated. He should be, Amara replied, her voice hardening slightly. He vowed to love and honor me. Instead, he mocked me in front of his mistress and his family. That's not a mistake, Mr. Okonkwo. That's a choice. And choices have consequences. She stood up, signaling the meeting was over. Your family will survive this. You'll lose the big house and the luxury cars, but you'll survive. Maybe if you're wise, you'll learn from it. Maybe you'll teach your children that a person's worth isn't measured by what they wear or drive, but by how they treat others when they think no one important is watching. Chaik's father stood slowly. Will you ever forgive us? Amara walked him to the door. Forgiveness isn't something you can ask for like a favor, Mr. Okonkwo. It's something that comes with time, with genuine change, with real understanding of the harm you've caused. Maybe one day, but not today. As he left, Amara returned to her desk and sat down, suddenly feeling very tired. She had won, she supposed. She had her justice. So why did she feel so empty? Sometimes winning doesn't feel like victory, it just feels like the end of something you wish had never begun. What happens when the Okonkwo family has to face the full consequences of their actions? Keep watching to find out. 3 weeks passed. The Okonkwo family estate went up for sale on a Wednesday morning. Mrs. Okonkwo stood in the driveway, watching as the real estate agent hammered a "for sale" sign into the manicured lawn she had spent years perfecting. Her hands trembled, but she refused to cry where the neighbors could see. Inside, movers packed up a lifetime of accumulated wealth. The crystal chandelier that had hung in the foyer for 15 years came down carefully, wrapped in bubble wrap, destined for an auction house. The Persian rugs, the Italian furniture, the imported marble statues, all of it had to go to pay the debts. Chaik's sisters helped pack their childhood bedrooms, both of them withdrawn from their expensive universities abroad, now enrolled in local schools they could actually afford. Adiz worked silently, carefully wrapping photo frames and books. Her older sister, Ngozi, cried intermittently, mourning the life they'd lost. Chaik himself had moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a middle-class neighborhood. The landlord had asked for references, and for the first time in his adult life, Chaik had to beg. The company that owned the building turned out to be one of Amara's subsidiaries, though the property manager never said so directly. They approved his application anyway. He knew it was her. Even now, even after everything, she was making sure he had a roof over his head. The divorce had been finalized the week before. He'd signed every paper without reading them, knowing he had no ground to stand on. Amara had asked for nothing from him, not a single naira. She'd simply wanted her freedom back. On Thursday morning, Chaik sat in his new apartment drinking instant coffee, something he'd never had to do before, when his phone rang. It was his mother. "Come to your father's office," she said, her voice flat. "There's someone here who wants to talk to the family." When Chaik arrived at the small temporary office his father had rented, he found his entire family gathered in the cramped space. But they weren't alone. Amara sat in one of the chairs, dressed in a simple blue dress, her hands folded in her lap. Beside her was Mrs. Chioma from her company, and Mr. Adeyemi, her lawyer. Mrs. Okonkwo stood by the window, her back rigid, refusing to look at Amara. Chaik's father sat behind his desk, looking weary but attentive. "Thank you all for coming," Amara began. "I know this is difficult, but I wanted to speak to you before you heard this from someone else." She nodded to Mr. Adeyemi, who opened his briefcase and pulled out several documents. Despite the termination of the primary contract, Adunola Corporation has been monitoring Okonkwo Industries' situation, the lawyer said. "We've reviewed your business model, your operational history, and your employee records. We've also noted your efforts over the past 3 weeks to secure new clients and restructure your debt." Chaik's father leaned forward. "What are you saying?" Amara spoke directly. "I'm saying that your business has value beyond the mistakes your family made. Your employees are skilled. Your manufacturing processes are solid. You're failing not because you're incompetent, but because you lost your anchor client and your reputation suffered." "I don't understand," Chaik said. "Why are you here?" "I'm here because 43 families depend on Okonkwo Industries for their income," Amara replied. "I'm here because your father came to my office 3 weeks ago and didn't make excuses, didn't ask for what he didn't deserve, but asked me to protect the people who had nothing to do with your family's choices." She paused. That showed me something. It showed me that maybe, possibly, there was still honor somewhere in this situation. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the busy Lego street below. "I'm not giving you back the old contract. That chapter is closed. But I am offering you something different." Mr. Adeyemi slid the documents across the desk. "Adunola Corporation is prepared to offer Okonkwo Industries a new contract as a secondary supplier for a different product line. The contract value is 40% of what you had before. The terms are stricter. The performance requirements are higher. And there's a clause that states if any member of the Okonkwo family engages in behavior that damages Adunola Corporation's reputation, the contract terminates immediately with no appeal." The room was utterly silent. "Why?" Mrs. Okonkwo's voice came from the window, still not turning around. "Why would you help us after what we did to you?" Amara turned to face her former mother-in-law. "I'm not helping you, Mrs. Okonkwo. I'm helping your employees and their families. I'm helping the economy. I'm helping the community. You and your family just happen to benefit from that." She paused. "But I'm also doing this because holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I'm tired of carrying this weight." She walked closer to Mrs. Okonkwo, her voice gentle but firm. "You humiliated me because you thought I was powerless. You thought that made you strong. But real strength isn't about who you can hurt. It's about who you can help even when they don't deserve it." Mrs. Okonkwo finally turned around. Her eyes were red, her face aged beyond the 3 weeks that had passed. "I was wrong about you," she whispered. "Completely wrong." "Yes," Amara agreed simply. "You were." Chaik's father stood up, his hand shaking as he reached for the documents. "These terms, they're fair. More than fair. We'll accept them. And we'll prove ourselves worthy of this chance." "I'm counting on it," Amara said. "But understand this clearly. This is not reconciliation. This is not forgiveness. This is business. I'm giving your company a second chance because good people work there. But you, as a family, have a very long way to go before you earn back even a fraction of my respect." She picked up her purse, preparing to leave. Adiz, who had been silent in the corner, suddenly spoke up. "Miss Adunola, can I ask you something?" Amara nodded. "How did you do it? How did you stay so calm that night? If someone had done that to me, I would have screamed, fought back, something. You just stood there and took it." Amara smiled sadly. "I didn't just stand there and take it, Adiz. I stood there and chose my moment. My father used to tell me, don't react in anger. Respond with strategy. Screaming at your family that night wouldn't have changed anything. They would have just called me crazy, dramatic, emotional. But walking away with dignity, preparing my response carefully, speaking from a position of power, that changed everything." She looked around the room at each family member. "You all thought silence meant weakness. You mistook my quietness for stupidity, my simplicity for poverty, my patience for acceptance. That was your mistake, not mine." Chaik found his voice, thick with emotion. "Amara, I know I don't deserve to ask, but can I speak to you? Alone? Just for a moment?" Amara looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. 5 minutes. They stepped out into the hallway, leaving the others inside. Chaik couldn't meet her eyes at first. "I've been going to therapy," he said quietly. "Trying to understand why I did what I did. Why I treated you the way I did." "And what did you learn?" Amara asked. "That I was scared," Chaik admitted. "You were always so self-sufficient, so calm, so sure of yourself. You didn't need me for anything, or at least that's how it felt. So I convinced myself you were boring, that you were the problem, because it was easier than admitting I felt inadequate." "You were inadequate," Amara said bluntly. "Not financially, Chaik. As a husband. As a partner. You wanted a wife who made you feel big by being small. I could never be that for you." Chaik nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it. For Precious, for laughing, for not defending you, For every single moment I failed to see the incredible woman right in front of me. I believe you're sorry, Amara said gently. But sorry doesn't erase what happened. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I spent trying to be enough for someone who had already decided I wasn't. Is there any chance? Chike started, but Amara held up her hand. No, she said firmly but kindly. That door is closed, Chike. But you showed me exactly who you were that night, and I believe you. The man I thought I married, the man I fell in love with, maybe he never really existed. Maybe he was just who you pretended to be until you didn't have to pretend anymore. She started to walk away, then turned back. But I hope you become better. Not for me, but for whoever comes next. Learn from this. Grow from this. Don't let this be who you are forever. As Amara walked down the hallway toward the elevator, Chike slid down the wall and sat on the floor, finally allowing himself to fully feel the weight of everything he'd lost. Inside the office, Mrs. Okonkwo stood at the window watching Amara's car pull away from the curb. We destroyed ourselves, she said quietly to no one in particular. We had gold and we threw it in the garbage because we couldn't see it shine. Second chances don't erase first mistakes, but they do offer the opportunity to do better. The Okonkwo family has been given a gift they didn't earn, but will they learn the lesson? Subscribe to see how this story ends and what Amara does next, because her journey is far from over. 6 months later, Lagos was in the middle of rainy season. Amara stood on the balcony of her private home, a beautiful but modest house in a quiet neighborhood, watching the rain fall on her garden. This was the home she'd owned for years but rarely stayed in, always keeping it private, always keeping this part of her life separate. She was hosting a small dinner party tonight. Not a business event, not a corporate function, just dinner with people who had become her real family over the years. Mrs. Chioma arrived first, bringing her famous coconut rice. Folake came with her husband and their twin daughters. Mr. Taiwo brought his famous chin-chin and plenty of stories. As they ate and laughed together, Amara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Real deep peace. You seem different, Mrs. Chioma observed, watching Amara smile at something Folake's daughters were acting out. Lighter somehow. I feel lighter, Amara admitted. I spent so many years trying to be small enough to fit into someone else's idea of what I should be. Then I spent 3 months being angry about it. But now, I'm just ready to be myself again. Fully myself. Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Adiz, Chike's younger sister. Over the past few months, the young woman had reached out several times, not asking for anything, just apologizing and trying to understand. Amara had begun responding, carefully, guardedly, but genuinely. The message read, Miss Adunola, I wanted you to know that I got accepted into the mentorship program at Adunola Foundation. I promise to work hard and make the most of this opportunity. Thank you for not holding my family's mistakes against me personally. Amara had started the mentorship program 2 months ago, offering young women from all backgrounds the chance to learn business skills, leadership, and financial literacy. She hadn't told the selection committee to accept Adiz, but she hadn't told them to reject her either. The girl had earned her spot on merit. Good news? Folake asked, noticing Amara's smile. Just a young woman finding her own path, Amara replied. Across town, the Okonkwo family was having their own gathering, though it was much quieter than it used to be. They sat in Chike's father's new apartment, a modest 3-bedroom place that was clean and comfortable but nothing like the estate they'd lost. Mrs. Okonkwo had changed the most visibly. She wore simple clothes now, her jewelry sold months ago to help pay debts. She'd started volunteering at a women's shelter, something Adiz had suggested. At first, she'd resisted, thinking it was beneath her. But slowly, she'd begun to see the world differently. I met a woman at the shelter today, Mrs. Okonkwo said quietly during dinner. She was a lawyer, successful, beautiful. Her husband beat her for years because she earned more money than him. When she finally left, his family came to her workplace and caused a scene, trying to humiliate her into coming back. She paused, pushing food around her plate. I saw myself in those family members. The cruelty, the pride, the absolute certainty that we were right and she was wrong. And I felt ashamed. Chike's father reached over and squeezed her hand. That's called growth, my dear. It's painful but necessary. Chaik himself had changed too. He'd thrown himself into work, proving himself at the company day after day. The new contract with Adunola Corporation was strict, and he made sure every delivery was perfect, every standard exceeded. He'd also started teaching a free business class at a community center on weekends, sharing what he'd learned about the dangers of pride and assumption. Precious had called him once, 3 months ago, asking if they could try again now that things had settled down. He'd politely declined. He wasn't the same man anymore, and he knew he had no business being in anyone's life until he'd fully figured out who he wanted to be. "Brother," Ngozi said, breaking him from his thoughts, "I heard that Amara is being honored at the Business Women's Gala next month. They're giving her the humanitarian award for her foundation work." "She deserves it," Chaik said simply. "She's built schools, hospitals, scholarships. She's changed thousands of lives." "Will you go?" Adiz asked. "To the gala?" Chaik shook his head. "No. That's her moment. She doesn't need reminders of her past there." The night of the gala arrived with typical Lagos glamour. The venue was filled with the most powerful people in West African business. Amara wore an elegant emerald green gown, her hair styled in an intricate updo, looking every inch the successful CEO she was. When they called her name for the award, the room erupted in applause. She walked to the stage with grace and confidence, accepting the crystal trophy with a genuine smile. "Thank you," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone. "This award represents something very important to me. Not success, not wealth, but purpose. My father used to tell me that money is a tool, not a trophy. It's meant to build, to help, to create opportunities for others." She looked out at the audience, seeing faces of people she'd worked with, competed against, learned from over the years. "I want to talk about something we don't discuss enough in business: dignity. Every person deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their position, their appearance, or what we assume about their worth. I learned this lesson the hard way." She didn't tell the whole story, everyone there already knew it. The video from that dinner had become infamous in business circles, used as a case study in business ethics classes about the dangers of making assumptions. "Someone once humiliated me because they thought I was powerless," Amara continued. "They learned I wasn't. But the real lesson isn't about power or revenge. It's about character. How we treat people when we think no one important is watching reveals who we really are. And how we respond when we've been wronged reveals who we choose to become." She held up the trophy. "I accept this award not just for myself, but for every woman who has been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed. For every person who chose dignity over retaliation, strategy over anger, and purpose over pride. Thank you." The applause was thunderous. As she walked off stage, several people stopped her to shake her hand, to congratulate her, to tell her how she'd inspired them. Later that night, alone in her car on the way home, Amara's phone rang. It was an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello. Miss Adunola, this is Mrs. Okonkwo." The voice was hesitant, humble in a way Amara had never heard before. "I know I have no right to call you. I know you owe me nothing. But I watched your speech tonight online, and I needed to tell you something." Amara pulled over to the side of the road, her heart beating faster. "I'm listening." "I'm sorry," Mrs. Okonkwo said, her voice breaking. "Not because I want anything from you. Not because I'm trying to fix what I broke. But because you deserved better than what we gave you. You deserved respect, kindness, love. And instead, we gave you cruelty and contempt. I'm sorry, Amar. I'm truly deeply sorry." Silence filled the line for a long moment. "Thank you for saying that," Amara replied quietly. "It doesn't change what happened, but it means something that you finally understand why it was wrong." "I do understand now," Mrs. Okonkwo said. "Too late, but I do. I hope, wherever life takes you, you find someone who sees you from the beginning, who loves you for exactly who you are, in all your quiet strength and powerful grace." After they hung up, Amara sat in her car for a long time, watching the city lights reflect off the wet streets. She felt tears on her cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of finally letting go of the last bit of pain she'd been carrying. She had won her battle not through destruction, but through dignity. Not through revenge, but through resilience. And now, finally, she was free. What happens when you choose character over vengeance, when you respond to cruelty with strategy instead of anger? You don't just win, you transform. But Amara's story has one more chapter, one final lesson to share. Keep watching to see how everything comes full circle. 1 year after the divorce, Amara stood in front of a classroom filled with young women, all participants in her foundation's leadership program. The room was in a building she'd purchased and renovated in one of Lagos's overlooked neighborhoods, turning it into a training center for aspiring female entrepreneurs. Adiz sat in the front row, taking notes diligently. Over the past year, she had become one of the program's most dedicated students, and Amara had watched her transform from a spoiled young woman into someone with genuine purpose and humility. Today, I want to talk about power. Amara began, walking slowly across the front of the room. Not the kind of power that comes from money or position, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are and refusing to shrink yourself to fit someone else's expectations. She told them her story, not all of it, but enough. She told them about being underestimated, about staying silent while she prepared, about choosing dignity over immediate reaction. Some people thought my silence meant I was weak, she explained. But silence can be strategy. Patience can be power. Knowing when to speak and when to wait, that's wisdom. A young woman in the back raised her hand. Miss Adunola, do you regret staying quiet? Do you wish you had confronted them immediately? Amara considered the question carefully. No, I don't regret it. If I had screamed and fought back in that moment, they would have dismissed me as emotional, hysterical. They would have made me the villain in their story. But by staying calm, by responding strategically, I controlled the narrative. I showed them exactly who I was on my own terms. After the class, Amara sat in her office reviewing proposals for new foundation projects when Mrs. Chioma knocked on her door. There's someone here to see you, she said with a knowing smile. I think you'll want to take this meeting. Amara looked up, curious. Who is it? A delegation from the National Business Association. They want to feature your story in their annual report on ethical business practices. But that's not all. Mrs. Chioma's smile widened. They also want to offer you the chairmanship of their ethics committee. You'd be the youngest person and the first woman to ever hold the position. Amara sat back in her chair, absorbing this information. The National Business Association shaped policy, influenced legislation, and set standards for businesses across the country. Being chair of their ethics committee would give her a platform to create real, lasting change. Tell them I'm interested, she said. Schedule the meeting. That evening, Amara visited her father's grave for the first time in months. She brought fresh flowers and sat on the bench nearby, talking to him the way she used to when he was alive. I did it, Papa, she said softly. I built something good from something painful. I turned humiliation into purpose. You always said that our character is revealed in how we handle defeat, not victory. I think I understand now what you meant. The wind rustled through the trees, and Amara felt a sense of her father's presence, his approval, his pride. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown international number. Miss Adunola, my name is Dr. Marcus Johnson. I'm a professor at Harvard Business School. We're developing a case study on ethical leadership and crisis management, and we'd like to feature your story. Would you be interested in speaking to our students? We believe your experience offers invaluable lessons about dignity, strategy, and moral courage in business. Amara smiled. Her story was reaching further than she'd ever imagined, touching lives, teaching lessons, inspiring change. Meanwhile, the Okonkwo family had found their new normal. The business was stable now, smaller but sustainable. They'd paid off their debts and were slowly rebuilding, this time on a foundation of hard work and humility rather than contracts they hadn't earned. Chaik had been dating someone new for 3 months, a teacher named Chidinma who knew his whole story and liked him anyway. She was kind, intelligent, and had no patience for pride or pretense. She challenged him to be better every day, and he was grateful for it. One Saturday afternoon, Chaik volunteered at one of Amara's foundation events, a career fair for young people in underserved communities. He didn't expect to see her there, but she was talking with students, encouraging them, sharing wisdom. Their eyes met across the room. Amara nodded politely, and Chaik nodded back. There was no anger there anymore, no bitterness, just acknowledgement. They had both moved on, both grown, both become different people than they were a year ago. At the end of the event, Adiz approached Amara nervously. "Miss Adunola, I wanted to tell you something. I'm starting my own small business, a consulting firm for young entrepreneurs. And I'm naming it Dignity Consulting because you taught me that dignity is worth more than all the money and status in the world." Amara felt her eyes water slightly. "That's beautiful, Adiz. I'm proud of you." "I also wanted to say," Adiz continued, her voice thick with emotion, "that I'm grateful you didn't let my family's cruelty make you cruel. You could have destroyed us completely. You had every right to. But you chose a better path, and that choice changed all of us. It changed me most of all." That night, Amara hosted another small dinner at her home, but this time there was someone new at the table. His name was Al-Yamid, a quiet architect she'd met at a charity auction 6 months ago. He knew who she was from the beginning, knew her story, knew her power. And he loved her anyway, not despite her strength but because of it. "Tell me about your day," he said as they cleared dishes together after everyone else had left. And she did. She told him about the students, the new opportunities, the ways her pain had transformed into purpose. He listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, supported her dreams without trying to diminish them. This, Amara thought, was what love was supposed to feel like. Not performance, not shrinking, not pretending. Just two whole people choosing each other, seeing each other, celebrating each other. As she got ready for bed that night, Amara looked at herself in the mirror. She saw a woman who had been broken and had rebuilt herself stronger. A woman who had been humiliated and had transformed that humiliation into inspiration for thousands. A woman who had been underestimated and had proven that the quietest voice in the room could also be the most powerful. She thought about the girl she used to be, trying so hard to be loved, willing to make herself small. She thought about the woman she'd become, standing tall in her truth, using her power to lift others. "Thank you," she whispered to her reflection, to herself, to the journey that had brought her here. "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for choosing dignity. Thank you for being strong enough to be kind." The moral of Amara's story isn't about revenge or even justice. It's about character. It's about the power of staying true to yourself even when others try to diminish you. It's about knowing that silence can be strategy, that patience can be power, and that how you respond to cruelty defines you far more than the cruelty itself. When people underestimate you, you have two choices. You can become bitter, or you can become better. Amara chose better. She chose to build rather than destroy, to teach rather than punish, to transform her pain into purpose. The Okonkwo family learned that pride comes before a fall, but they also learned that genuine humility can lead to redemption. They lost everything they thought mattered and discovered what actually does: character, dignity, honest work, and treating every person with respect regardless of what you think they can do for you. In the end, everyone got exactly what they needed, not what they wanted, but what they needed. The Okonkwos needed to be humbled to grow. Amara needed to be freed to soar. And thousands of young women needed to see that you don't have to be loud to be powerful, you don't have to be cruel to be strong, and you don't have to shrink yourself to be loved. True power isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself, your reactions, your choices, your path forward. Amara had that power all along. She just needed the right moment to show it. So remember this: never judge people by their quietness, their simplicity, or their humility. The person you underestimate today might be the one holding your future in their hands tomorrow. And more importantly, when you face your own moment of humiliation or betrayal, remember that you have a choice in how you respond. Choose dignity. Choose strategy. Choose to become better, not bitter. What do you think about Amara's journey? Have you ever been underestimated or seen someone rise above cruelty with grace? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart or taught you something valuable, Subscribe to our channel for more powerful African stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us all of the strength that comes from character and dignity. Remember, your story isn't over. Like Amara, you're still writing it, one choice at a time. Thank you for watching.